Hamas war would not have started under Donald Trump.
Cap.
It's good. This process has gotten more conciliatory over the course of time.
Okay, so what evidence do you have to support that claim?
Okay, so the latest reports from the New York Times of internal papers from Yahya Sinwar suggested that he was essentially counting on Iranian interference and help with the October 7th attacks, and that was incentivized by the fact that Iran was attempting to forestall any sort of deal between Israel and the Saudi government for Saudi to join the Abraham Accords. It was very well known at the time, and I happen to know that the Saudi government was very much ready to join the Abraham Accords if Donald Trump had been reelected. If that had happened, that would have forestalled Hamas action because the incentive to have done what happened on October 7th would largely have been gone at that point. The entire purpose of that attack was to prevent the formation of a broader Sunni-Israeli alliance in the Middle East.
Do you think the incentive of October 7th was simply Iranian plot?
I think that the Iranians were certainly interested in facilitating the Hamas attacks, and without Iranian support, it would be very difficult for Hamas
I want to ask you, do you think that the conditions in Gaza in any way factor into October 7th?
I mean, I think that the conditions in Gaza certainly factor into support for Hamas. As far as the specific attack of October 7th as opposed to rocket attacks, the distinction between, for example, continuous rocket attacks that have been happening since 2006 when Hamas...
That whole normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel and India, for that matter, which India is now actually an official member of BRICS, I think along with Saudi Arabia, that whole normalization was economical. You know, it could possibly play into the fact or lessen Iran's influence in the region, but I highly doubt that was the reason why October 7th happened. And the fact of the matter is the Palestinians and the resistance groups in Gaza took it upon themselves and acted alone. This has been well known throughout the Middle East that they acted on their own. They made the decision to carry out this military operation because within the parameters of the normalization with Saudi Arabia and Israel, the idea of a Palestinian state, it would literally be non-existent. And that was what triggered that reaction from Hamas. I don't think Iran had anything at all to do with that. Okay, let's just be frank here.
For the Gaza Strip and the wide-scale terror assault of October 7th is sort of a difference in kind.
Now, since 2005, what has Israel done to the Gaza Strip to formulate or allow kind of the otherization of the Palestinian people who live in the Gaza Strip?
Well, I mean, in 2006, Hamas took over, promptly killed everybody who's associated with the Palestinian Authority, has never held an election since, and has been running the place with an iron fist.
Now, I want to understand, now, with an iron fist, is Hamas the one who is putting forth the land, sea, and air blockade in the Gaza Strip?
The land, sea, and air blockade is specifically because Hamas is in control of the Gaza Strip.
Now, I'm confused.
All right, so yeah, there's complete dictatorial control of Gaza, okay? And see, and this is what look, I'm not saying, look, I'm being as neutral as I can possibly be here. I'm just stating facts. And Ben Shapiro and all these other cats, like, they never want to admit the fact that, you know, Hamas was endorsed by the Likud government, Netanyahu's government, in order to create a divide between more right-wing Palestinians and the left-wing leaning Palestinians, the ones in the West Bank who are, you know, more aligned with the PA, right? Hamas is more hardline Islamist. So that whole, everybody knows that, you know, but Shapiro always wants to deny the fact that the government that he supports, the Likud, they were heavily involved in allowing Hamas to run Gaza when they leave 06.
Because if we expect that the October 7th attacks only happened because Iranian influence in the area, I don't see how 17 years of a land, air, sea blockade will happen if that's not a symptom to allowing people basically pressure cook its way into something like that happen.
Okay, the idea that October 7th was specifically as an incident caused by movement between Hamas and Iran and Hezbollah and coordination between those groups for geopolitical reasons is the claim. If the claim that you're making is that October 7th was sort of an inevitability based on the conditions on the ground in the Gaza Strip, that's not exactly how I think foreign policy works.
No, I'm saying foreign policy works in the sense that you can't ignore the overlying cause of an issue. So now when we talk about the Abraham Accords, do you not think that the Palestinian people not involved in the Abraham Accords plays any part into the region remaining unstable, specifically with these two groups of people?
The region got specifically much more stable while Donald Trump was president because of the Abraham Accords.
With again, I don't know how you can go and
What?
quantify that when the Palestinian people are not involved. 2023 was the deadliest year for Palestinian children on October 6th, according to a UN report published on October 6th. Now, if we go and keep ignoring the Palestinian problem, then I don't understand how we can continue to act like forging partnerships between Gulf Arab countries is going to promote stability to the region when we're leaving out 2 million people in Gaza and then 2 million people in the West
I mean, it
Bank.
was promoting a lot more stability in
For
the
who?
region.
For
I mean,
who?
for the Saudis, for the Bahrainis, for the UAE.
And then yeah, October 7th still, you're telling me October 7th still happened because of geopolitical reasons in that area. If the Palestinians are not addressed in the Abraham Accords, why do you think that there was a need for October 7th to happen?
I mean, the reason October 7th happened was specifically because of the confluence of Palestinian desire to put the issue of Palestinians back on the front pages and an Iranian desire to use that as a wedge issue to
Now,
destroy the Abraham
front
Accords.
pages, as opposed to what? As opposed to it being silenced through political plays under Donald Trump to promote these Abraham Accords that, again, don't achieve the root issue of the problem. The Palestinian people cannot be left out of the table when it comes to a resolution or an accord dealing with the conflict.
I mean, okay, so the root issue of which problem specifically?
Of the problem, do you agree with the legal settlements in the West Bank?
With the illegal settlements? I mean, so it is...
First, do you consider
illegal.
settlements illegal?
No.
Under international law, it's considered illegal.
That is not true. It
I
depends
mean,
on- it
the
depends on-
UN and most international foreign bodies have decided that those settlements are legal. Now, do you think that...
True. Even Trump said they were legal. Even Trump said they were
trash,
illegal.
So that's what I was gonna say. Is that if the UN is trash,
Yes.
if nobody around this area can be brokered into as a third party, if Israel's not allowing third party investigators to come to the Gaza Strip and determine what's happening there, who can justify, who can have the moral authority in the region and say that this is what's happening, that this is a reason of this, or that putting them towards the backside of the conflict is this reason? I need to understand from you, what's your prescription for the area, for the Palestinian people? Are you like Ben Gvir, who says that there's three options: willful emigration of the Palestinian people, like live under subjugation as a second-class citizen of Israeli rule, or third, die? What's the option?
No, I mean, moderating and then electing a government that is worthy of actually governing its people and not stealing billions of dollars from its people, either the Palestinian Authority, Islamic Jihad, or Hamas, would be an excellent start.
So I need to understand, do you feel like they have the opportunity to do so when they're under the subjugation of 17 years of a blockade by an occupying power? If for 17 years, since the disengagement of Israeli settlements in the Gaza Strip, Israel was able, by the flick of a switch, to turn off the electricity, water supply, and fuel reserves. Right now, we know that in the north of Gaza, up until today, 2 weeks went by where no humanitarian aid was going in. There is no Rafah border anymore. There is no humanitarian going through there. It's been demolished.
Okay,
And then in the other,
I mean, it's not true that humanitarian aid is not going in. Actually, just a couple of days ago,
just
100
a
trucks.
couple of days ago, because since October 1st, there was no aid going to the northern part of Gaza.
Because there are ongoing anti-terror operations in the north of Gaza.
So does that mean that the civilians who are in the northern Gaza are not subject to humanitarian aid because there's a military action by an occupying force?
It means that there's no actual excellent way of distributing that aid. This has been a major problem with the humanitarian aid throughout. The last time they sent 100 trucks, this is what I was going to mention, they sent 100 trucks of humanitarian aid in just a couple of days
Before
ago.
October 7th, 500 trucks were needed to sustain life in Gaza. 100 trucks were supposed to say thank you.
At least half of the aid is being stolen by Hamas and then
Again,
resold.
I need you to understand.
Here we
that
go.
Almost every international humanitarian rights group says that this humanitarian crisis is man-made. It is man-made.
I agree that it's man-made.
And I know who you think the man is.
Yes.
I'm telling you, there's only.
It's not Hamas. Wait, does Hamas have any agency here at all?
I'm telling you that right now, if
Do the
you want
Palestinians
fair,
have any agency
the
here at all?
Palestinians absolutely have agency, but again, with an occupying force, what does that agency limit to? If a Gaza fisherman can't go 6 miles past the nautical line that Israel has arbitrarily placed, what agency is there to
Why do you
limit
think
to?
that Israel placed that line?
Again, that's what I'm telling you, is that how
Just
do you
for fun
expect,
or what? Do
Again,
you think Israel wants soldiers in the Gaza Strip?
Again, here's the thing.
Because they
I know
literally pulled
that
that road out in 2005.
I know that high level cabinet members in the Israeli government right now is saying that we're going to resettle in Gaza. That this is
Some of them have made genocidal claims. Let's not forget the Amalek scriptures that they would read before attacking Gaza. that were, you could say, genocidal in nature.
This is the plan. That
That
we're
is a
not going to
fringe
release.
position in the Israeli
Now,
government.
do you
It is
agree with that
certainly-
position? Do you?
No, with the resettlement of the Gaza Strip, no.
Okay, so you want the Gaza Strip to remain Palestinian land?
Oh.
I mean,
just wanna
I'm
know.
perfectly happy for it not to remain Israeli land, but that doesn't mean that it can be governed by the current entities that the Palestinians are choosing to govern themselves. The last entity they did, Israel pulled out in 2005. A terrorist group now ruled the region and then promptly used it to build kilometers of terror tunnels that outsized the London subway.
the help
I
with
want
the
you to
Israeli
understand,
government.
Ben, that there is no way for any type of democratic institution or process to happen in the Gaza Strip when there's an occupying force who will go and subvert it. If you have Israeli parliament
So they don't
members-
have agency.
If you have, I mean, it's hard to when there's an occupying force
It
under
actually,
your throat.
believe it or not, it actually is not that hard not to vote for terrorists.
It 100%.
It is not.
It's not. It's 100% impossible for you to go and make that distinction when there is no alternative. Right now,
That is not true. There's not an alternative.
no, there is no
was.
alternative to life under no occupation for the Gaza Strip. Again, I'm asking you simply, is that right now, if you have Israeli parliament members, Knesset members who are saying that we plan on resettling Gaza, that this is not
That is
Israeli
not
land.
a government position.
No, again, these are people who can fracture the government of Israel in
You
an
know what is a
instant.
government position? The government of Hamas that is currently holding 100 hostages, including babies. This war would be over today.
And the
if
hostages
Hamas
should be
gave up the
released, and no
hostages.
civilians should be involved in the
Should
conflict.
Hamas surrender?
So I want to
Should Hamas
ask you.
surrender?
I think that there should be no civilians involved in this.
Should Hamas surrender
Surrender to who?
to the Israeli government?
Will the Israeli government stop bombarding civilians if that is? Because
If
right
Hamas
now,
surrenders, yes.
Because right now we saw them march from the north to the south of Gaza, and they said that the whole goal of this war was to what? Was to return the hostages. Correct?
I mean, there was a dual goal.
There was
One
a
was to
dual
destroy
goal.
Hamas,
Now,
and the other was to return the
See,
hostages.
that's the thing. When I come to the table to argue with someone, I want to assume that there's good faith, not that there's a dual goal or dual ambitions in the process.
Of course, there's a dual
Because
goal.
that's
If
right
there were
now-
no hostages, the singular goal would be the destruction of Hamas.
Okay, now understand this. Netanyahu will continue to project this war because he's facing crime and bribery charges. So there's no, again, I need to understand, Ben, if there's
There
no...
was a full-on unity government in Israel, including his opposition, until a
And
couple of
so
months
his
ago.
unity government will not let him end this war, except the ceasefire
Unity
deal, because
government
they can
included people
fracture the
like-
government. Yes or no?
No,
Can Ben Gvir, if he decides to call for snap elections, can him and Smotrich not decide that this is what we want to do, and Benjamin Netanyahu is immediately supposed to,
I promise
to
you,
run for prime minister?
If there were snap elections today, Netanyahu first of all is leading in the polls. But even if he were not leading in the polls, Benny Gantz, Gadi Eisenkot, Naftali Bennett, people who are actually running in the election against Bibi Netanyahu, would be pursuing extremely similar policies in the Gaza Strip simply because Israel cannot allow Hamas.
That I agree with. Yes, most of these, they all call for an election to remove Netanyahu. Most, if not all of them, have the same policies and have the same opinion about what's going on in Gaza, and will continue implementing the same policies that they have been doing for the past year. Okay.
To continue to govern the Gaza Strip.
Awesome. So then the hostages are placed second to this. So this isn't about, there can't be two
This is-
dual goals.
Of course there can.
How?
Why could there not be two
Because
dual
one of
goals?
these goals is completely antithetical to returning to the last one.
What? How?
Because when you-
in fact, they are deeply connected. If Hamas does not surrender, how are the hostages getting back?
Again, I'm saying because every operation that dealt with returning the hostages involved the death of arguably more civilians and more hostages in the area. Yep.
Good to meet you.
Yeah, look, man, the fact of the matter is, guys, when they left in 2006, Hamas was voted, they claimed they were voted in by the people. We have no proof of that, guys. We know that the Likud party at one point supported Hamas because they were more of a right-wing hardliner group, obviously, from what we're seeing now versus the Palestinian Authority. And even prominent prime ministers came out and said this. Okay, they've said that, they literally supported their uprising in Gaza to prevent a Palestinian state. Okay, and they went to war 4 or 5 times from 2006 up until now, which is probably the longest war Israel's ever been in, or any of the other countries in that region, other than like Iraq and Afghanistan, obviously, right? But
Hey, Ben, nice to meet
How's it
you.
going?
So just returning to the prompt that the war in Gaza wouldn't have started if Trump were president.
Yes.
The reason that I disagree with that so vehemently is just looking at history. I don't think that the bombing of the Beirut embassy would have happened if Jimmy Carter had won in 1980. I don't think that Nixon is responsible for the 6-Day War. For the Yom Kippur War. I don't think that if Dewey had defeated Truman, that Israel wouldn't be independent. Israel is a sovereign state. They make their own decisions based on their own security issues. We're both Jewish men. I think we can both say that Jews are very independent and that we don't need to be told what the U.S. government wants to be able to make our own decisions. So for all those reasons, again, just looking at the history of the region and how all these other wars developed because of situations on the ground, I just think that it's unfair to say that either political party in the United States is responsible for the war-making policy of the Israeli government, whoever is in charge.
Okay, but we're not discussing the war-making policy, which was a response to October 7th. The claim was really whether October 7th would have been launched by Hamas, knowing that Israel has complete military superiority over Hamas, which Hamas must have known. Why that gets launched on October 7th, why that didn't happen, for example, under Donald Trump or any time in the intervening 17 years from when Hamas took over the Gaza Strip. And the rationale that I'm suggesting is that basically, the Biden administration came in. They decided to take an antithetical view to the Saudi government, not just the Israeli government. They came in, they were very unfriendly to Saudi Arabia, for example, delisting the Houthis as a terrorist group. They started to draw closer to the Iranians in an attempt to pursue a revision of the JCPOA. They attempted to draw distance between themselves and the Israeli government. Hamas saw this, Hamas and Iran saw this, and they decided that the best way to put pressure on the Abraham Accords more generally and to forestall any prospective peace deal between the Saudis and the Israelis would be to launch the attack right now.
See, and what I would argue is what was much more relevant to the launching of the attack on October 7th was Yahya Sinwar being released by the Israeli government
Yeah, man, I don't think the Abraham Accords posed any type of threat to Iran. The reality of it is the Arab states that they did have an agreement with, whether it be Saudi Arabia, Egypt, there's only a few of them, UAE and Saudi, they've already kind of been in agreement. Jordan, which is, is actually a CIA installed government there. They've already been in agreement. I think that the normalization with Saudi Arabia was a big one, and the concept of a Palestinian statehood was pretty much lost. Like, it was gone. It was just like, all right, we're going to sweep this under the rug. And there could have been implications with the deal, meaning, they could have brokered a deal to, like, expand Israeli settlements and, continue to eventually expand in Gaza and all these other places and expand the region. So I think October 7th was a response. It's like a kind of a last attempt to establish any type of Palestinian statehood, because diplomatically it was impossible, all right, in the Palestinians' point of view, right? So they took military action at that point. And so they're kind of right now risking it all. And this is the crazy part. Now, the idea of a Palestinian statehood is even more of a concept that people are rooting for a world. I mean, look at the European countries. They damn near turned on Israel. Look at France. Russia's calling. Russia just had a BRICS summit, and the first thing he said, we need a Palestinian state. So that wouldn't have happened if they would have took the Mahmoud Abbas approach or whatever, where, hey, let's try to negotiate something. Let's take it to the UN. Let's go to the international court. Wouldn't have got anywhere, all right? Especially with the normalization of the Saudi Arabians. That was going to be an economic blow. They're going to be an economic powerhouse. Israel was about to be an economic powerhouse in the Middle East. And at that point, they're unstoppable. So, but the idea of the Abraham Accords, where they have a peace treaty with the Israelis and to trade freely, that wasn't a big threat to Iran. I don't even think now Iran's even. I think if Iran had it to them, because they were already doing well, after the sanctions were lifted. And they have billions of dollars now. They're selling oil to China and Russia. I think it was inevitable because of their connection to Russia, China, the New World Order, BRICS. Iran wasn't tripping off the Abraham Accords. It was the Palestinians. It was Hamas. That was what drove October 7th, Palestinian statehood, which is more a possibility now, back to being a possibility.
Exchange for the name of the soldier is escaping me.
Gilad Shalit.
Gilad Shalit, thank you.
That happened 10 years ago. I mean, that was 2
I
decades
know.
And Gilad Shalit was exchanged. They say one soldier was exchanged for like 200 Palestinian prisoners, one of which was Yahya Sinwar, which was the Hamas chief during the October 7th operation. So that's what they're
I
talking
think you would
about here.
acknowledge that the sophistication of this plan would have taken years. I don't think it was planned in relation to anything the U.S. government was doing. Again, I point to all of these other attacks and wars that happened over the year that had nothing to do with who was in power in the White House. It had to do with specific situations between the Palestinians and the Israelis. And I just don't think it's helpful for us to pretend that the U.S. is the determining factor in this war. I think you would agree.
Well, the reason it's helpful, I think, is because when it comes to foreign policy, this goes to sort of a root issue about foreign policy that's rather interesting to discuss, and that is the belief that when the United States draws away from American allies, when the United States draws significant distance with American allies, particularly in regions of the
drawing
world,
away from American allies. That's Trump that did that. He's the one that says NATO's a bad idea and us being allies and having an internationalist foreign policy is a bad thing.
To be fair, the actual policy of President Trump, which was to actually increase the amount of funding from each NATO nation into NATO.
No. That was Obama.
No,
that was Obama in 2014.
That was.
Okay. Yeah, it was.
They increased the amount of
Trump
defense spending
ran on
under
that
NATO.
issue.
Yes, and that was what. And that's
but Obama's the
results
one
were-
where the policy was actually implemented.
Well, no, the policy was also
about the
implemented.
2% goal.
The increase happened
and
under
on
President
top of
Trump.
that, NATO expanded under Biden. So
NATO
I'm not
expanded
su-
under Biden as a result of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. It didn't expand under Biden preemptive to the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
No, I'm not arguing that. But I'm saying if the question is who has been more dedicated to our system of alliances overseas, it's clearly the Democratic Party.
I mean, that is clearly not true. If you're talking about what has effectually made American allies stronger, the answer would not be the policies of the Biden administration. I mean, if we want to talk Ukraine, we can. We can talk about the slow walking of aid to Ukraine throughout the Ukraine war. I'm a big advocate of the idea that the United States actually should have pursued a policy of rushing more aid into Ukraine and then pursuing an off-ramp as soon as possible, sort of Henry Kissinger's suggested policy early on in the war. But if you're talking about...
so then we would agree that it's a mistake for Republican congressional officials
To cut aid
officials
to
in
Ukraine?
Congress to cut aid to
Yes.
Ukraine. Okay.
Yes. When it comes to the Israel-Gaza war, the Israel-Hamas war, which is what this led off with.
Yeah.
Again, my contention is that the timing was driven specifically by a desperate hope by Hamas and Iran to break the burgeoning Saudi-Israeli and Sunni-Israeli alliance that was happening in the Middle East. And the best way they could see to do that was to launch an attack to bring up the issue that had largely been sidelined by the Abraham Accords, because it turns out that a great way to make a deal between countries that disagree on issue A is to make a deal on issues B,
But
C, and
that
D.
presumes that the Sunni American alliance against the Shia Iranian-backed alliance only started under Trump, and that's just clearly not true. We've been aligned with Sunni-led governments for at least the last 50 years.
The realignment of the Middle East
The
under President
alliance
Obama.
with Saudi Arabia goes back to World War II.
I mean, of course, that's true. It's also true that Barack Obama's distancing from Saudi Arabia in favor of, for example, the JCPOA, which Saudi opposed, so did the Israelis, so the Bahrainis, so did all the countries of the Abraham Accords. And then the return to that ideology under Joe Biden exacerbated potential conflict in the Middle East.
I don't agree with that, but if anybody else wants to go, we don't have a lot of time. Thank you.
Oh shit.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing okay, how are you?
I'm all right, thank you. So, I guess my first lead into this question is, can you tell me what did Trump do to potentially prevent this war from happening, and what did Biden not do, or what did he fail at that ultimately caused it to
Facts.
happen?
Okay,
Facts.
sure.
What
So-
did Trump do to prevent it? Like, he wouldn't have prevented. If anything, he caused it to happen.
The Trump administration,
Come on, man.
drawing closer to Saudi Arabia by attempting to broker the Abraham Accords and successfully doing so with a multiplicity of countries in the region, weakened Iran. He also weakened Iran by keeping massive sanctions in place, which really prevented them from spreading terror in the same sorts of ways that they did under the Obama administration or the Biden administration as well. The Trump administration was very clearly and obviously pro-Israel in a way that the Biden administration has not been. They've been a little bit more shaded on the issue.
In what ways?
The United States, for
That's
example,
a
acknowledging
lie.
under Donald Trump that Jerusalem was the capital of Israel, continuation of military aid to Israel.
What does
without
that
any
do?
attempt to condition or slow walk.
What is the Trump acknowledging Jerusalem being the capital of Israel do for anything or anyone, guys? Like what? What? It didn't do anything, guys. And the fact that he wants to sit here and lie and say that the Biden administration has been backtracking on Israel or giving them a hard, it's complete bullshit. They've literally been sending them billions of dollars. The weapons shipments have not slowed down. And they need a government in power in the United States that could somewhat be anti what Israel's doing or be like the moral high ground, quote unquote. So that way, everything there could be justified. So we won't look crazy. We're not looking at Americans like they're crazy, because like the fact that if it was someone in office who's allowing this stuff to go down, where you have over 150,000 civilians killed under the rubble, they say it's 40,000, but it's a complete lie, right? America's now like the moral high ground in the situation. They're like, we're really just trying to stop it. We're really just trying to, we're trying to broker a deal. We need a ceasefire. But then we turn around and send them billions of dollars in weapons and ammunition and cluster bombs and bombs that cost $3 million that they're dropping on these huge residential buildings in Beirut, Lebanon, which is a country that's bankrupt pretty much, that has economies destroyed. Come on, man. Who the hell are you guys playing? Like,
Joe Biden,
who is Ben Shapiro lying to?
From the very beginning of the war, was basically attempting to slow walk or condition aid based on certain things that were happening in the war. This sort of stuff, and the preview of that sort of stuff before October 7th, distance that was drawn between the Israeli government and the American government, leads opponents of Israel to believe that the United States is not going to be in their corner.
Dude, America has an open credit line, an unlimited credit line for the Israelis to use in this war. Stop bullshit.
Do you think that the United States has, in any way, shape, or form, not shown that they are not in support of Israel? I mean, one of Kamala Harris's talking points every time she starts is that she believes that Israel has the right to defend itself.
I mean, so just this week,
she says it all the time. She says Israel has the right to defend themselves. And then if anything, Trump has said some certain things about, we have a video of him cussing out Netanyahu, or, Trump seems like he's the guy who's gonna put an end to all this stuff, or not put an end to it, but he seems like he's the guy that's not in favor of what's going on there. To be honest with you, if you had to choose between Trump and Biden, just from the rhetoric.
And put forward an open threat.
Trump says he doesn't even want to overthrow the IRGC. Like, he doesn't want to overthrow the government in Iran right now. He wants to keep the same government and make a deal. Biden says that they have to, that one way or another, that they have to get rid of them. So
to embargo arms to Israel earlier this year,
because
there was
of
an
why?
actual embargo against Israel.
Because of why?
Well, I mean, they're claiming that it's because of lack of humanitarian aid in the northern Gaza
Yes.
Strip. That can be their claim. I don't actually. Okay. Anybody who claims that there's a genocide going on in the Gaza Strip does not understand the definition of the word genocide.
Don't tell me what's the definition of genocide.
A systematic destruction of every member of a population.
Is Israel a system?
But no.
Are they on their way to completing and fulfilling a genocide?
No, they're
potentially. If they kept on going the same way that they're doing, could they completely eradicate the Gaza Strip?
Israel has the military capacity to do that, and they have certainly not done that. And the reason I can say they have not done that is you know how long it would take them at the current rate.
Dude, your definition of genocide was incorrect. Every member to disintegrate every member of the society. Look, sir, it could. First off, them, ethnically cleansing that area and giving them the option to pretty much just leave their homes, and they have a no right to return law there. Let's not forget that. So if they bounce, if they moved over to Egypt, it's over. They can't come back. That is a form of genocide, sir. Go look up the definition. Right? Go look up the definition. That is a form of genocide. Whether it's done, whether you want to market it a certain way, or you want to use certain words like, oh, well, we're just we're targeting military infrastructures, and then you have civilians that are on top of the home, so we have no choice. Oh my God, there's a stadium filled with women and children. Oh shit, but there's one Hamas soldier there. Boom. Come on, bro. Like who this is why the rhetoric is just like it doesn't work anymore. Like I think they thought that like people like us won't see this stuff and be like, you know what? No, this guy doesn't have a point. No, this doesn't make any sense. I think they really thought they could stoop the American public or people in general, man. Like, dude, we're not that dumb, sir. We know what a genocide is, and we know that you don't have to kill every single member or every single person in the entire enclave of the Gaza Strip to refer to it as a genocide, sir.
Do that, especially given the fact that they are completely targeting terrorists.
Are they completely targeting terrorists? Are children terrorists? Are the children the dead babies?
Targeting
the kids?
Civilian collateral damage is not the same thing as targeting civilians.
But is that not a byproduct of genocide?
No, that is not. Genocide is where you systematically destroy a population specifically because you wish to kill the civilian population.
Sir, and what she should have done is asked them, how many Hamas members have you guys killed? And that's the question that, an IDF official was asked that on Piers Morgan. He didn't know how to answer that, right? Several of them have been asked the same question. How many Hamas members have you guys killed? Oh, well, it's roughly around, some will tell you 3,000, some will tell you 5,000, some will tell you 15,000. And it's a new number every time. So let's not shit ourselves here, okay? We know that a certain amount of civilians have been killed. They say on a conservative end, which I highly doubt it, 45,000. Right? I'm thinking it's more like we're not, no one's allowed to go in there and investigate anything. So, but people are estimating based off of just common sense. It's more like 150,000 that have been martyred in Gaza.
He's right. That's not very pro-life.
Well, it turns out that Hamas is not pro-life when they hide behind children and women.
Neither is Israel when they drop bombs and nukes on Palestinian villages and families.
Are you suggesting that Israel is using nuclear weapons?
Is a bomb automatically nuclear?
No, not even remotely.
So that's what I said, a bomb.
and a nuke. Okay, Israel uses as small munitions as possible to target specific terrorists.
Okay. All right. So let me put the statistic out here, guys. I'm gonna have to pull this up because I'm actually done with this interview. I can't do this anymore. So during the Gaza war, the amount of tonnage of the explosives dropped on the Gaza Strip is 3 times the amount that was dropped on Hiroshima. Check this out, dude. and Gaza's like what, 360 kilometers? Hiroshima's about double that, right? This is a picture here. 70,000 tons of bombs dropped on Gaza. 15,000 tons were dropped on Hiroshima. That was a nuclear bomb. 70,000 tons. That's almost 4 times, 5 times the amount dropped on Gaza, which is less than maybe half of the size of Hiroshima. So when he says that they haven't dropped a nuclear bomb, and he's trying to say that there are, they're using precision missiles, which they can. The IDF is very sophisticated, and they're very their military is one of the best in the world. They can literally, they have the technology. Like if it's a 100-foot story building, they can, and they want to attack the 54th floor and keep the building intact. They have the technology to do that, right? To carry out strategic operations in the enclave. So how do you explain this amount of explosive, like 75,000 tons?
They do this using drone technology. They have to go through 4 layers of legal before any strike is actually approved by the upper layers of the Israeli government. I've seen this actual process in action. I've seen the actual footage at Palmachim Air Force Base in which Israel goes through the process and shows exactly how they have to go through multiple legal steps in order to green light a hit on a terrorist. And they have they've released footage of this, them calling off particular strikes if they believe that the minimal amount of civilian casualty damage cannot be maintain. Okay. So the basic idea, again, what you're talking about here is a population of 2 million Palestinians who are living in the Gaza Strip. Total number of war dead at this point, according to best available statistics, is somewhere between 30,000 and 40,000 dead. Okay. That is not a genocide. It is a horrible, horrible war with horrible human casualties.
Over 150,000.
It's not a genocide.
To your definition, which I will have to disagree with. But that brings me to my next question.
Name a war that isn't a genocide by your definition.
One that isn't a genocide?
Yes.
There's plenty genocides. They've happened.
I mean, my point is that you don't seem to be distinguishing between the definition of a war and the definition of a genocide. Well, you're saying that if mass casualties happen, it is necessarily a genocide. I'm saying that is not true.
Got you. My next question, do you believe Israel has the right to the... Yeah.
And Palestinians. Again, the question of killing civilians is a question about who's hiding behind the civilians. Israel's not going out of its way to kill civilians.
All right, man. Yeah, bro. This is again, That's why I call him Ben Capiro. Ben Liero. You know, because the dude he's a pathological, man, he is a Haaretz newspaper mouthpiece. You know, the guy's a liar, man. Like, all the stuff that Trump did probably exacerbated the situation in the Middle East. Let's just be honest here. Okay, with the Abraham Accords and the sanctions on Iran, and then Russia being, sanctioned, broke. Iran was broke. Russia was broke. China was, so when they had the opportunity, that's why they went and mingled with the election and got them kicked out. That's why they went and did what they had to do. And now they have more money, and they're forming their own damn currency. And it's looking bad, man. Like, it's looking bad. Like just sit down on the negotiating table and broker a deal. Because it's over with. Like, we're not going to sit here, because the people are going to suffer. The American people, Europe is suffering. The European economy is garbage. So come on, man. Just broker a deal and leave everybody the hell alone, man. Let everybody enjoy their lives. We don't want to keep seeing these people die. We don't want to keep seeing all these tragedies occur over the world. And now you're on the brink of World War III, man. Like, let's get it together. And if you think Trump's going to sit there and negotiate, I don't know, man. I don't know. I think they're both him and her are playing for the same team, okay? They're playing for the same cabal. Just put it that way.